the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and it feels good to be back. Joining me once again, Mr. Kevin Durso. How you been, man?
Does it feel good to be back?
So it feels good to be back on the call. It feels good to be back recording the show. It feels good to be back behind the mic here, but man, the product's been rough. We'll get into that.
Okay. Now we're talking. Okay. So it just feels good to have something to do around it, but not necessarily what we have to talk about.
Right. Although, honestly, we picked a poor time to miss some shows because, by goodness, we have missed some big stories.
Yeah. Okay. So full disclosure, not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, I did attempt to make a short video.
Okay.
It just did not come across well at all. And I'm like, after a couple minutes of trying that, I'm like, I'm just giving up on this. I don't feel like this is even necessary. Let's just let it go. And I mean, it was still so early in everything that was going on that we're going to kind of discuss on a broader spectrum.
Dive into in a second.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we're not really going to go game by game here. There's too many of them to describe from
most of them aren't fun.
But realistically, from a really, like, honest to goodness, a really fun game that started everything, because the very first game after the first show that we didn't do, it was a lot of fun. They were still in a really good spot at that moment. And even the game that started what we're really going to dive into big time here, that was probably, again, another really fun game, all things considered. I mean, the first few were really fun and enjoyable, and then
the crash happened.
I mean, that very first week that we didn't, I have to figure out exactly when we didn't do a show. I guess the second week we didn't do a show. This wasn't as much of a disaster as it became, even then. And then it really just hit in waves right after that. Like,
things got real bad and
in a hurry. And I mean, yeah.
And when things kind of hit their, I would say, pretty close to rock bottom, we did see a coaching change. And that brings us to our first major topic here.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. I'm never gonna sit here and complain that we don't record the show at our usual slot or whatever, or whenever there's, because very weirdly enough, 2 of the 3 weeks we didn't do the show, there were Sunday night games.
Right.
And that's, for me anyway, that's really weird. I'm not used to it.
Yeah, we don't like Sunday night games here just because it disturbs our production schedule.
Well, here's the thing. In fairness, I didn't mind the game that was on Sunday, the first one, which was in New Jersey. It's a road game. It's Sunday night. Actually, that was fine. I was at a wedding on the Saturday before, which took up my whole day.
We literally done a show after that game.
Well, and not only that, but there was a big breaking story that hit during that, even because the Islanders were going through a COVID deal and they postponed a game that afternoon that involved both the Flyers and the Islanders. So that happened, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't disappointed about the fact that it was literally the only home game of the week. And I'm like, okay, so I don't have to go to one this week. Everything's gonna be on the road. It's gonna be do it from home. Cool, I'll take it. It's been, the holidays were busy enough. I had, you had the 2 road games leading right into Thanksgiving, leading right into annual Black Friday game, wedding on a Saturday day off, Sunday night game. Hey, by the way, everything's back to your usual by Monday.
Right.
That's a little rough. I'll take the Tuesday night off. I'll take the Tuesday night off and I'll enjoy that for what it's worth.
Right.
But that created like this big gap here, and you could start to see the writing on the wall with what we're talking about with Alain Vigneault anyway, because the first few games weren't horrible of this losing streak that they went on. The loss to Tampa Bay was probably still a good one. The first Tampa Bay, we have to specify because they played Tampa Bay 3 times in a very short stretch.
Yeah.
So the first loss to Tampa Bay, when you are relatively outplaying them in the third period and just have, it's been rare, a totally awful goal that Carter Hart gives up, kind of fluky. There's 2 minutes left in the game, and you feel like you just got robbed of at least a point. No one's going to sit there and say they were assuming it was going to be a win, but they were on their way to something, possibly, whether it was going to happen in overtime or maybe they were going to press and they were going to be the team that scored in the final 2 minutes and win in regulation somehow. all right, that's an awful way to feel like you're going to lose a game. And then Claude Giroux comes through. 8 seconds left, big goal. And given where things were at that given moment, truthfully, the roof practically came off the place.
Oh, yeah. You felt like things were turning around.
Because to this point, this is a team. I mean, they hadn't lost back-to-back games all season to this point.
Right.
Everything's going the right way. And almost everybody at that moment felt like you could just accept it for what it was right in that moment.
Sure, you're pushing the Lightning to the limit.
They just tied the game. You're going to get a point. You felt like 2 minutes ago you deserved a point. You were about to lose one. You'll take it every day of the week.
It felt like a gritty playoff type win where you claw your way back into it and just give yourself a chance.
Well, and given who they had played, too, I mean, the win against Carolina is still fresh at that point, which was all Carter Hart.
All Carter Hart, man. He's had a couple games like that this year.
And then you could say the same about the Calgary game, but the way you played the Calgary game and the way you played it in overtime, you're feeling good about yourself because at the end of the day, what you're looking at is you're going 3 of your last 5 games have been wins, 2-1 wins, no less, against top of the line teams.
Top teams.
Washington, Carolina, Calgary. All right, the loss against Dallas just wasn't there. All right, the game against Toronto, it just wasn't there. I mean, right now, look at where Toronto is now as we talk about this. I don't know, what is it, about a month later? Like, Toronto's just rolling.
Toronto has just lit it up.
So to an extent, I'm not going to sit here and get super frustrated about the back and forth with it, especially when we consider from the Dallas game on, you were right back in the same situation that you were in leading up to that point, which was the Dallas game. You got Ryan Ellis back and Kevin Hayes back, and then that lasted for a game. Ellis was back on the shelf right after, and Hayes lasted a game and had a much more fluky situation. Like, that injury played out in front of us. It wasn't like, hey, he just tweaked something. Oh, well, like it was normal movement.
We
he got taken down awkwardly
happened.
And something happened.
Right.
We knew that. All right, fine. So, but either way, you're back in the same spot. So it kind of did feel like survival mode again. They're sitting here giving you nothing on it. I mean, to the point where by the end of the thing, Alain Vigneault is not even giving true injury updates because he's going, I don't even want to put a timeline on it. Every time I say something, I'm wrong.
Right.
All right, fine. So you're trying to deal without those two again, and you're kind of just playing the keep your head above water game. So when you can get a point like that against Tampa Bay, you'll take it. And they do lose the game in a shootout. Okay, it happens. And the Boston game that followed, I know it was 5-2, and people look at the 5-2 final and consider it this really lackluster game. It was tied at the midpoint of regulation.
Right. It was a competitive game most of the way.
It wasn't until the third. It wasn't until the third goal. As soon as they gave up the third goal, which came later in a period, and you were playing decently at that point, you had crawled back in from being down 2-0. You were tied again, and it felt like you're going to hear me say this a lot about a lot of the games that we kind of just roll over here quickly as we build on what leads to this big coaching change here. Is it felt like the air came out of the balloon. It felt like the snowball just started to build. In that game, it definitely happened. The Tampa game was just no match. I mean, it was the second Tampa game was just no match at all.
That Flyers team didn't show up.
And then the Florida game, full marks to Martin Jones for what he did that night. He gave you a chance.
He did his best Carter Hart impression.
I mean, and he gave you a chance, and good for him for doing it. But
Martin Jones got you that point. Absolutely.
But for sure. And you know what? You felt like you could take that as a slight positive because at that point in time, it's not, it's a 4-game losing streak, but they had a 4-game losing streak 2 years ago with 2 games that went beyond regulation. You
Right.
got 2 points. It's like winning 1 out of 4. You still equate something. You're going to take a pause here really quick
And
try to come back from
like that out of your backup during all of this.
exactly
Is something huge.
Yeah.
Right.
But you try to take a pause and you try to think that maybe the thing that you can look to is not who you're playing, but you're going to have some gaps here. You're going to have, at the time they still had a back-to-back the following week, but you have Friday, then Sunday, then Tuesday, Wednesday, then look at this big 3-day break that's built right in. How nice is that? And
Only we knew.
Right. Well, okay, so here's my problem, and here's where it kind of starts on the losing streak, if you will. They were in that Carolina game way longer than the score would indicate. Down to, they scored immediately after Carolina ties the game. Like, they go up 50 seconds into the game. They give up the tying goal. They get a highlight reel shorthanded goal from Joel Farabee that just takes the roof off the place.
Pretty.
And then give up the tying goal again early in the second, but come right back and score again. And it's not like, and think about it, it's Rasmus Ristolainen who scores the goal, which kind of, again, because it was his first, it feels like everybody kind of gets a little fired up from that. And then right away, the very next shift, you give it up again. And then you give up another one, not even 5 minutes later. Like, all of a sudden, it looked like the defensive structure of the team we saw a year ago, which was non-existent.
Really, really leaky. Yeah.
Right. So they looked downright awful at that point, and that's how they give up 6 goals to Carolina. And you really needed that New Jersey game to be a shot where you put this to an end. I mean, it was already up to 5. You're playing a team like New Jersey. There's your break. There's your spell. By this point, we know that the Islander game's off, which was going to pit pretty much the bottom 2 in the division at that point, which would have been a curious thing to see. I mean, I would have loved to have seen what the Flyers looked like against that team at that time if they allowed them to play.
The chance to play that team.
Probably. But see, there was no harm in sitting there looking at the game ahead and going, you just got an extra day off. You get 2 days between your game against New Jersey, whatever the result may be, and the Rangers, who are doing really well. Right. So you have some time before, like, this isn't Tampa and Florida back to back.
Right.
Which that's why we give full marks to the game, to Martin Jones in the game against Florida for doing what he had to do in a back-to-back to get a point. Like, Absolutely. We knew that they were going to be spent in that game at some point. So that New Jersey game, just total missed opportunity, because you get the game tied in the third period. It's early. You look like you have a whole third period ahead of you to play that tie game, maybe next goal wins kind of thing. And then you just got totally sloppy again.
Yep.
And it just looked awful. And that's the way it goes sometimes, I guess. But, like, geez, it was just bad. And then the Ranger game, like, tensions are mounting already at that point. It's up
the
to,
team is not doing well.
Well, no, but now you're up to 6, so tensions are mounting. It's not now. You're not just in the little, hey, we lost a couple in a row, first back-to-back losses, not 3 or 4.
Yeah,
you're getting to a point where you're losing 6 in a row, and you're falling further and further behind. So the question on Alain Vigneault is already out there by this point, and I don't blame them for trying to see what would happen for a little bit there. But to me, I was sitting there looking at that week going, I wouldn't be shocked if something didn't go right against the Rangers. This thing's over. Like, his time's up.
Right. I mean, you got 3 days to gather the troops for whoever the new coach is.
Right. Well, because I just couldn't see them. I mean, and they're going this route, so I don't want to make it seem like I guess I didn't know it, but it seemed like I just couldn't see them going the interim route here, because what good would it do? What's the difference here? It's going to be pretty much the same style, because they already know the coach that you would be bringing in.
Right.
Like, it felt like what they really needed was, and I'm trying to talk from where they were at that moment, because the more that we kept seeing, the more I kept changing my tune,
right.
And I don't want to let, we have what the losing streak became. I don't want to let the weekend change my mind per se, because it shouldn't change anybody's mind. I mean, I had to write a takeaways article, which I literally just published before we started doing this, that tried to make it like clear that wins are wins, and you got to accept the back-to-back for what it is, and make no mistake about it. Winning a couple games in a row feels good for a team that hasn't won a lot in the last month. So
that's going to be a nice little flight home. They get to relax.
Yeah, sure it is. And I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, they're back on track with 2 wins in a row. Here comes the winning streak. Here comes the little rally. Get you back into it. Like, you almost shouldn't want that. It's hard. It's sad to say,
right.
because okay. So let's get to the actual meat of what's on the screen right now, which is this decision. The Ranger game was not very good. I mean, they had a good effort. I don't want to say they didn't play like they could have won the game. They got, Shesterkin was really good that night. They probably had their moments where they could have been right in that game. If they could have built on what they had kind of started in the second period, where they did get 1 goal back, it's 3-1. If you make it 3-2 going to the third, maybe you
Oh, it's
got
anybody's
something.
ball game.
Right,
Absolutely.
then maybe you got something, and maybe it's because it's now a 1-goal game. Maybe it turns into something. But 3-1 going to the third just felt like if they could just stick to what if the Rangers could just stick to what they were doing, they would find a way, and they did. I mean, by that point, it just felt like everything was deflating, and
Shesterkin was on top of his game. He
yeah.
was
But
playing
you
out
could
of his mind.
feel at that point. I have to see because didn't he make? Yeah, the Flyers outshot them
33 of
34.
34. Yeah.
33 or 34, but the Flyers outshot them 34-28. So the push was there, you know.
Sure.
But you were like, there's so many things that Alain Vigneault was doing at that time, post game anyway, that I can't even remember which games they're after to talk about it. But like, there was a lot of you could hear desperation in his voice. You could hear a lot of frustration. You could start to see the shift here where he was, I don't want to say putting it on the players, but he kind of was shifting some of it to the players to an
He
extent.
was
I mean,
sounding like a cornered animal. He's fighting for his life a little bit.
one of the games, I definitely think that this was after the Ranger game because their next game didn't go very well, after that. But one of the games you got a very like, he started talking, like, I think somebody turned around and said something about, can you take a positive from like either the way you played or something like that. And it might have been that Ranger game because they were playing better process wise, but it wasn't the result. And he turned around and he said, we can't take anything. We need to just win a game. And this is serious here. And so like, and you like not, no pun intended here, but like you could hear the seriousness in the "this is serious here" thing.
Right.
But I thought what was really telling was he said something along the lines of, they need to win games. And I forget which game this was, maybe because I feel like it was the Carolina game, because I feel like it was a home game. And he had said they need to find ways to win games 2-1 or 1-0. And doesn't that just put a ton of confidence in everybody that basically you have to play perfect defensively in order to win a game at that point? Like, no pressure, play a perfect defensive game.
Get ready for white knuckles and high blood pressure.
And if it came after something like the Carolina game, which is what I'm thinking is, because I feel like I was in the room when it was said, then think about playing, and maybe New Jersey, you could have felt that way, but think about playing the Rangers and saying, you can't give up more than 2. Or can't give up more than 1. It's got to be a 2-1 game. Think about playing Tampa coming up after that and going, you can't give up more than a goal against Tampa, even without guys that are really good.
Right.
So that brings us to that final game, which was just a total mess.
7-1.
I mean, I'm trying to go look at the box score really quick because I want to just see how quickly they played. Like, they played a really good first 5 minutes, and I know that means nothing, but they played a really good first 5 minutes, and it felt like, again, as soon as the Rangers, I'm thinking Rangers because Ryan McDonagh scored the first goal. That's why I'm on there. Ugh. As soon as Tampa Bay scored the first goal, and with Ryan McDonagh scoring the way that he did, which it wasn't like it was a point shot or anything like that. It was a rebound. He drove the net. Nobody was really there to pick him up. Pretty easy stuff. Yeah. And as soon as they scored that goal, you started to sense that the tide was turning already. They got another one a minute later. Corey Perry scored at that point, and
they kind of gave up.
I wouldn't even say they gave up. Like, the first period, it's still 2-0, and then as soon as it built in the second, because you can come out after a first period like that, and let's face it, that was the Boston game all over again, because against Boston, they were down 1-0 at the end of the first, but it became 2-0 like 50 seconds into the second period.
Right.
You can dig down at that point and look at what your winning streak or what your losing streak is and say, got to find a way. And against Boston, they did claw back and get it to 2-2 and set it up where maybe if you can get the next one, you're on your way to not even having a losing streak, you know? And instead, they gave up another goal 3 minutes into the second period, another one just shy of 7 minutes in, as the wave just kept coming, and then the mistake that Carter Hart makes with while shorthanded, just the giveaway and the goal, which literally moved in slow motion. Of which at that point in time, like, I think after that happened, all I tweeted was, "You can't make this up right now. Like, you can't make what just happened up, for one." And then everything that happened right in that moment honestly felt a little wrong. Like, they pulled Carter Hart at that moment, and I'm like, you got to back-to-back the next night. Unless you're planning to play him again and trying to just get him out of here as soon as possible, which they didn't. They played Martin Jones the next night on top of here's half the game left against this team.
Right.
Which by the way, on that given moment, didn't have Braden Point, didn't have Nikita Kucherov, didn't get the best performance offensively at all from Anthony Cirelli or Alex
Big
Killorn.
stars, really.
Well, no, but they're in your top 6 for Tampa.
Right.
On a good night, they're still in your top 6. So, Stamkos contributed but didn't score a goal in that game. Those two didn't contribute anything, no points at all. Hedman had a 3-assist game, so he did do some things there, obviously.
That's fair.
But you're looking down the list of the goal scorers, and you're going, McDonough, Perry scored 2, Radish, Kachuk, Joseph.
Kachuk's first of the season, right?
First of his career. Radish had his first of his career the night before in Boston, and then scored again. Pat Maroon is scoring a goal. Perry is not only scoring goals, but making moves on Scott Lawton like it's 2007. Like Corey Perry went back in time and turned back the clock, and all of a sudden was dangling
the DeLorean for a minute.
And was dangling people.
Right.
Like, come on, I think he was. No, he wasn't. Oh, and by the way, on top of all of it, in goal that night for Tampa Bay was the backup, who was a former Flyer, who had 4 starts all season, Brian Elliott. Yeah, so come on, the stars were aligning for you that night, to an extent against Tampa, but your confidence is shot when you've lost 6 in a row coming in and it turns into 7, or 7 in a row and it turns into 8. I'm sorry.
And I think Tampa had a crazy schedule before that too. It was a scheduled loss for Tampa.
5 and 8.
Yeah, 5 games and 8 nights. Coming into Philadelphia at the end of this long trip, you're on the road. That's a scheduled loss. You're supposed to lose that game as the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Even if you don't lose it as the Tampa Bay Lightning because you're really good as the Tampa Bay Lightning. You don't win the game 7-1.
Right.
You don't do that.
You don't dumpster fire the Philadelphia Flyers to the point where they fire their coach in the middle of a home back-to-back.
Which is exactly what surprised me. It wasn't that they did it. I felt like the writing was on the wall in 2 different ways. It was either going to happen after the Ranger game, and when it didn't, when it was, we're going to get a couple good days of practice in. All right, fine. You're going to get a couple good days of practice in. Sounds great. When they lost the way they did on Sunday, I looked ahead and just went, to an extent, show me the win for the rest of the week. Which one of these is a win? They're not going to be Colorado. And then they've already lost to New Jersey once, so I'm not confident. Vegas looks like a loss. And then you go, well,
Arizona's pretty safe, hopefully.
It should be, but if you go into that game having lost 11 in a row and you're incredibly fragile, if you don't come out of that one, I don't know how you look at the fact that there's 2 days before your next game and don't make a change. That was it for me.
Top of your head, don't look.
Yeah.
How many points do the Flyers have?
Oh, in the season? In the standings for the season? Right now it should be 24.
They have 24 points in 26 games.
Right.
Without looking, how many points do the Arizona Coyotes have?
12.
12 points.
Oh, I knew that already because of the fact that
5-20-2.
Because regardless of what would have happened, or regardless of what happened against Vegas, Arizona played the same night. And if Arizona would have won, I just would have thought it would have been interesting because I really didn't give them a shot against Vegas, period. I did not give them any shot. So I'm sitting there thinking they're coming into this game, they're going to be on 20 points, and now I do have to look at all this because I don't know where everybody is. But I knew off the top of my head, I'm like, just go into the league standings and go, Vancouver's already passed you at that point. Chicago has passed you to that point. This is going into Friday. So Vancouver's passed you. Chicago's passed you. Seattle is right there.
Yep.
And Buffalo is right
Dave
there.
Haxtell.
Right. And Buffalo is right there. Down to 1 or 2 points for those teams, and they're going to pass you. And the Islanders I'm looking at, and I'm going, they've got games in hand, and if they can just win one of these, and if you don't win this weekend, they're right on your heels.
Yep.
And then you get head-to-heads against the other ones too. Imagine if Arizona swept out the weekend and got to 16 points, and then you've got Montreal's at 15, Ottawa's at 17, and you play them next week, and you're stuck on 20, and there's no end in sight to this thing. Can you imagine where you might end up? You're going to be a bottom 5 team.
You're going to end up with an empty building is where you're going to end up.
I don't know if you're going to end up with an empty building. It never seems like they do.
If you go 16, 17 losses deep, like we're talking about, theoretically,
Well, it doesn't matter anymore,
man, come
obviously.
on.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter anymore, obviously.
Right.
And look, I'm not trying to sit there and say they would have. Like, I'm saying this is how the narrative shifts from one direction to the other a little bit. Like, I'm not holding my breath that they're turning the season around because they won back-to-back games over the weekend. Okay. But I do appreciate the fact that after this week happened the way it did, after this move happened,
Yep.
and it's been a lot of fun watching the way this week has kind of developed from that standpoint because of the fact
Kind of in the way that watching a car crash is fun.
well, no, but like, hear me out because now there's almost been playing with the fact that there's a coaching vacancy in Philly because once this happened
There
and
are
they didn't
names out there.
well, and they didn't go immediately to somebody. They kind of just pumped the brakes. They're like, let's see what happens. And which is kind of why, like, I don't know how you should feel. Like, really honestly speaking to Flyers fans, I don't know how you should feel about back-to-back wins and the possibility of playing the teams that you're going to play next week. Because it's not impossible when you look at a team that finally, like I even wrote in the takeaways, take the shutout loss to New Jersey in the middle of the week that was downright awful for a team that should have had a pulse at that point.
I blocked that game from my memory.
Right, you should.
Oof.
But that should have had a pulse in that game, something that should have been going right.
That's right up there with the Calgary game, the 4-0 Calgary game from earlier in the season.
Easily their worst game of the year. Easily their worst game of the year to this point. But even including that game, in their last 4 games, they've scored 14 goals all of a sudden. They're at their best. They're at their best offensive production point since the first 3 games of the season.
Well, and hey, Kevin Hayes is back. Maybe. Okay, listen.
Kevin Hayes is not.
I'm gonna go rose-tinted glasses here. If the Blues can do it, we can do it too. Coaching change. Big old losing streak. It's time. Let's go. Still plenty early in the season. There's still 50-some games.
Oh, so wouldn't it be ironic if you bring up the Blues? Mike Yeo is the guy who got fired from that team.
I know, right?
To now be the guy who comes in and is supposedly the savior. I mean, I don't see it that way. I'm not going to sugarcoat that.
Listen, y'all know me. I'm the rose-tinted glasses guy, right? Like, we got to go.
Rose or orange or whatever, yes.
Yeah.
I got you. But nonetheless, like, no, because I don't know any other way than to just tell it like it is. And
the team sucks.
Let's put it this way. I didn't write takeaways after Monday. I just wrote, it's time to tear the thing down.
Here's my thing, though.
It's kind of hard to go back on that one, by the way, after you lay it out there.
You're not wrong. And, like, we've kind of talked a little bit about a rebuild, and the group chat, even though we haven't had a show, the group chat has been quite active, and we've talked about a lot of things.
Yeah, do you want to know something that's ironic, too, by the way? I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there on that Monday morning, and sure enough, here it comes. Alain Vigneault's been fired. It was about 10 a.m.
Sarabelli had it first, I believe.
It was about 10 a.m. Usually, I'm like quick to hit you guys with that type of stuff, like it's happening or something like that. Like I did it with all the signings and trades and whatnot.
You're pretty good. You're pretty good.
Do you know, honestly, do you want to know why I probably didn't, to be honest? Because of the fact that I really didn't expect it that particular day. Like, okay. There's a game later that night. I didn't think you would do it on a day like that. Like, very clearly somebody... Right, or just even off of a back-to-back. I didn't think it would happen.
I wonder if there was an incident.
No, I don't think there was an incident. I'll kind of... Okay, so now I'll get into as much as I think I know around this particular move in a second then. Yeah. So it definitely... Like, I had just published a takeaways article from the Sunday game maybe 15 minutes earlier. So I'm just kind of sitting back at that point, and then the report was out there, and now... Like my entire day has just like I'm no joke. I'm sitting there thinking I've got legitimately a day off here. They're not going to obviously they just came in. There's no they didn't have a practice that day, so they weren't going to practice again until Tuesday, or no, I'm sorry, it's game day. So it's mostly a day off. Like all I thought I had to do was get a preview together, and there's another game later on tonight, and it'll be a normal Monday game day type thing. But I'm going to have a gap here. Like, hey, this article's done. The takeaways are done. I don't really need to get the preview out until about 1 o'clock. I'll have some time. And then after that, I'll have more time to just very casually go into when I want to go down there. and it just turns your whole day upside down because it's get a story together on the fact that he's been fired. Now await the press conference that's coming at noon, which, obviously
Who
I
all's
had to,
going with them? Because when a coach gets fired,
oh no, by that point we already
they
knew.
just. Oh, okay.
By that point we knew about Terrian too. Yeah.
Okay.
So Michelle Terrian out as well as an assistant. So we
knew
all
then
that
Mike Yeo
like,
was going to be the interim.
Yeah. By that point everything's kind of circulating. Like all that happened within the first hour as I'm trying to get a story together. But then it's press conference at noon. I had a really weirdly flexible radio spot that day because I was supposed to go. Originally, I was going to go on at about, I think 3:30, 3:40, something like that. And then I got bumped back a little bit because, look, it's no secret when you're going on a 4-for-4 station, and it was the day after an Eagles win.
Right.
Like you're not exactly
fit where you fit.
Well, not only that, but like it's the day after an Eagles win, and in terms of that, like it was their coach has a press conference and they air it. So like they're sitting here going, it depends on how long that press conference is to see where the slots line up. Like, I get it. I totally get it, which is why I ended up doing the spot before I even left for the arena that night, as opposed to I could have tried to bust it to get down there if it was going to get delayed until after 4. I could have, there's like, I had a couple options. I just sat it out. I'm like, I'm literally dressed, ready to go down to the game. I will literally do this and then put the computer in the bag and go.
Right.
Like, that's it. Get out of here and move on. And but basically it takes up your whole spectrum of time. Like literally the breaks that I had in the day were enough time to eat before going to the game and get a shower before getting on, like going on air and going to the game. That's what I had time for in between all of that craziness. Because in the back of my mind too, I'm to get into where I'm going with what happened in the game after and all the things that kind of played up to kind of start this whole week in bigger terms here. There was like in my mind, I'm already thinking about where I wanted to go with the next day's thing, which was like, listen, it can't just be the coach's fault at this point. It can't be, because yes, look, did you change half the roster over? Sure you did. But did you do the right stuff? Like we admitted that there were certain moves that they made that we said, listen, it's low. It could be low risk, high reward. They're not expensive moves. They're not long-term moves, but they're gambles. They're still bets. You're still sitting here if you're Chuck Fletcher and you sat there in the offseason and went, here's my chips, all in. Let's go and see what we can get and see if this is what works. And you traded a bunch of guys, and he did. And in the beginning, there was promise there. And then there was nothing. There was no promise at all. It looked like it didn't have a direction. And at the very least, that's what helps fuel the argument that I'm making when I said tear it all down. They don't really have to work that hard to tear a lot of it down.
Right.
They've got 12 players on expiring contracts right now.
You're not wrong.
And that includes, like, that factors in the extensions that they made at the end of all of this for 2 more players.
Right.
That now have long-term deals. The thing for me is that you're not doing anything to generate much buzz if you focus on the 1-year guys who literally were probably always going to be 1-year guys, more than likely. Like,
right.
You can, and I sit there and I feel this way. I don't know if you can get something for Keith Yandel down the line. You might be able to. He's a veteran. He might be valuable to a playoff roster for depth
somewhere.
That's still something though. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, I'm not shooting high. I'm saying, can you get a pick for, like, a mid-late pick for him?
Can you get a pick for Ristolainen, even with salary retained?
Yes, that I think you can, because people will still look and go, he's a minutes eater. Like,
that's true.
You can, and again, same thing. And as much
big,
and
big
he's physical,
nasty.
And he's physical, and the guy's never played in a playoff series before. And if you put him in a playoff series and say go, because the physicality in the playoffs reaches a new level.
Right. Say go nuts, kid. Have fun.
Right. And if he can toe that line, maybe draw some penalties by getting people pissed off at him, you do it.
That's fair.
But I wasn't even jumping to him per se. Like, that's a good. That's a really good.
If we're breaking it down, he's gone.
Oh no, but it's a great name to go to. But I was starting really low and then going from there because, like,
fair enough.
Because truthfully, Derek Brassard gets you a pick.
Sure.
There's not a playoff team out there that doesn't look at their depth and say, "We all good?"
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you had no audio.
Sorry.
Okay. There's not a playoff team out there that doesn't look at a Brassard type player and say, I couldn't, I don't want one of those for the playoff push, because
it's just
one Well, because it's one way or another. There's two ways that type of player helps you.
How much did Vegas give up for Thomas Tatar?
Oh, that's a good question.
Wasn't it like a first and a third or something ridiculous? Like, that's exactly what you're looking for out of Derek Brassard, right? Like, I don't know if he's quite as skilled as Thomas Tatar at this point, but
no, but like I would like, honest to goodness, I think that
Thomas Tatar ended up being a healthy scratch. He was just depth for Vegas. They didn't end up using him.
Brassard has to be able to net you at bare minimum the same, if not slightly more, than what you got from Michael Raffle.
Yes.
Like, Michael Raffle got you a fifth.
Okay.
Brassard's got to get you bare minimum a fifth, maybe like a third if you're lucky.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
And you take the pick because of the fact that you need to stockpile picks and use them to your benefit. However, like, you can just as easily package picks and get maybe let's break it down this way. One of the reasons why, and I've this is a great tab to put up because I've compared this a lot to the Rangers of a few years ago. The Rangers kind of had to slowly but surely build it in a certain direction. And did it get accelerated by some luck?
Ooh, it sure did.
Well, it got accelerated by luck in two areas. Luck in the sense that you essentially won two lotteries.
Right, a sense in Capo Caco and Alexis Lafreniere.
Right, which you get, okay, that's two players that you didn't think you were going to have that you end up having, right?
But the lottery's not rigged, though. It's okay.
Sure. So you got those two that you kind of lucked your way into through the lottery, but you also had, like, you were the destination that Artemi Panarin wanted. If you weren't, if that didn't play out that way, who knows what you're doing. But
same with Adam Fox. Adam Fox forced his way to New York too. Jacob Trouba.
Did Fox? I didn't realize Fox did, but that's where I was.
Let's put it this way: he forced his way out of Carolina, and then also his way out of Calgary.
I didn't realize he did all that. I knew about the trades. Okay, I didn't realize it was actually there was a backstory to it. But Fox
caused. He wanted to go be in New York.
But then that's where I was going with it though. Is that Fox? The cost for Fox for the Rangers from Carolina was 2 draft picks.
Sure, but he won the Norris Trophy. Who cares?
No, I get that. But what I'm saying, what I'm trying to get,
23 in the reigning Norris winner. You'll trade.
Okay, what I'm trying to get is if you stockpile draft picks, having a few picks just in various ranges can lead to, hey, you have enough picks to package them for maybe a guy who's an unknown at the moment. You take a shot on his development. I think the bigger concern is that there's a lot of teams we're seeing that know how to develop their players a lot better than the Flyers are developing their players. Like the Flyers don't have anybody that you sit there and think, oh my goodness, that guy's lighting up. I mean, I've come away from this entire exercise with 2 names I'm not moving.
Wait. Okay, let's see if we agree here. I think Carter Hart's a pretty safe one.
He is.
Now the other name is not quite as easy, honestly, because you could go a couple different directions here. I'm going to throw a couple out, and then I'm gonna kind of give my final guess. You could go Ivan Provorov. He's your stud defenseman. You got him signed kind of long term at this point. He's wearing.
By the way, I'm just gonna let you roll through. I'm not saying a word.
Absolutely. I know. You could go Sean Couturier. Probably your best player. Probably your C after somebody else may or may not leave this year. We'll talk about that in a minute. You go a couple different directions. I personally, and this may or may not be a biased take, would go with Joel Farabee because I love me some Joel Farabee. There's an argument for Travis Konechny, although I think he's pretty movable, honestly. Final answer, Joel Farabee.
You got it.
Bang! Love me some goal Farabee.
Now listen. Okay, first of all, by the way, before we let's put this little footnote in the past here. Tatar was traded to Montreal along with Nick Suzuki for a second and Max Pacioretty.
Okay.
And then after which, like, eventually, I think everything else since then was free agency. I don't think he ever got traded after that.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay. Hold on. Wait. I'm sorry.
There should be a trade before that. How he got to Vegas.
That's okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, to Vegas. Okay. First round pick in 2018, second round pick 2019, third in 2021.
Right. It was a first, a second, and a third for a guy that Vegas ended up healthy scratching in the playoffs.
For a guy that also has done next to nothing, even in like after signing in New Jersey.
Crazy.
All right, so back to Joel Farabee.
Okay, so if we
Oh,
are
by the way, footnote in the middle of all this, because we didn't really touch on the details of some of these games. Joel Farabee got hurt in the middle of this losing streak.
Yes,
so and he's week to week as well. So like when it rains, it pours, because they had just gotten Kevin Hayes back again at that point.
If we were doing weekly shows, it would have been a major topic, but in a month-long recap, it's a little tough.
Okay, listen, never have I been more satisfied with not doing a show last week than waking up on Monday morning and getting that news drop at 10 a.m.
That's fair, because that would have been rough.
Like, I looked at that and I went, I have a feeling we lucked out by not having a show at this point, because now, what happens? Like, if, at that point, because I came out of that Tampa game going, that's the type of game to get your coach fired. That is exactly that type of game that gets your coach fired. All right, so let's go to the what's next thing, the breakdown of where I'm coming from with this. All right, first of all, you didn't want to say his name. I will say his name because I haven't been afraid to say his name over this whole course of time. You already know what I'm going to say, so
I know.
So brace yourself, because it's coming.
So
it's the reality.
You need Dead Poet Society, Jeff.
You need to sit down with one Claude Giroux and honestly, here's the thing.
And ask him where he wants to go.
No, because I don't think it's that simple.
He's got a full no move clause. It kind of is that simple.
No, because the full no move clause is why I'm saying that. Because what you need to do first and foremost is make sure he's willing, because he has to be willing to do it. I think so too.
He's a competitive guy. He wants.
But my point is, because everybody comes back to him, and I understand why. You just said Sean Couturier is probably your best play. To me, he's still your best player. Giroux is still your best offensive production player.
I don't disagree with you. Oh, offensive production player, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah.
Who's still whether he's your best defensive player or not. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you a question. Right this second,
yeah,
without a cup, is Claude Giroux a Hockey Hall of Famer?
That's tough.
Because I think if the answer is he has one Stanley Cup ring, that is a yes.
It's close. I will give you that.
I think it is a firm yes if he gets a ring. And the fact that he doesn't have one right now might keep him on the edge.
I need to look something up really quick as I'm doing this. So you go ahead and tell me what you're thinking.
So here's what I'm thinking. You sit down with Claude and say, hey, Claude, would you like to go into the Hockey Hall of Fame? Okay, great. Pick a team. Do you want to go try to win a cup with the Colorado Avalanche? How about the Boston Bruins?
You're reading my mind with some of these things. Because I've literally said, if you put Claude Giroux on Colorado or a team like that, that's the type of team that Colorado's the type of team, because they can't do this just on their own.
Toronto just put Marner on LTIR. They can fit Claude in.
Yeah, but nobody's going to do this now. They're going to do this in March. But here's exactly where my thought process was with this. If Colorado has somebody let's just hypothetical here. If Nazem Kadri gets hurt in February, they're the type of team that should be calling the Flyers going, how much for Claude Giroux? I want this guy, because think about it. Come playoff time, it doesn't matter anymore.
Oh my God. Imagine playing against a line of Nazem Kadri centering Claude Giroux and Andrei Burakovsky. Do you want to play against that line, dude?
No.
And also, by the way, that's the second line, because you still have to deal with Nathan McKinnon, Gabe Landeskog, and Mikko freaking Rantanen. Good luck. Good luck. 7 games. Good luck. You're not going to last 7 games. Good luck.
So let's try to make.
Who cares if their goalie is a wet paper bag? And we'll talk about paper bags in a minute. But who cares if their goalie is a wet paper bag? They're going to score 78 freaking goals.
Yeah, for what it's worth, by the way, Colorado in the last week or so, or a couple weeks, has scored as many goals in their last, I don't know what it was, 13 games that the Flyers had scored all season.
Yeah.
More than that.
Sounds about right.
All right, so I wanted to do this because this is what's going to try to make the argument, because Claude Giroux is closing in on, let's talk about Claude Giroux in a couple ways. He got a big milestone over the weekend
Yep.
and then has a couple more that are coming up rapidly.
So this weekend he became the franchise leader in power
play points.
passing Bobby Clark.
Okay.
334 is the current number.
And I don't even think that's maybe no, it's not. Okay, never mind. He didn't have a power play point in Saturday's game. Never mind. Okay.
Well, that was the record-breaking number. I don't know if it's.
No, I know, but that was the only one he had in.
Okay.
That was the only one he had in Friday's game, and then they did score on the power play in Saturday's game, but he did not get a point on that.
Right.
No, because it was a connecting shot. James Interim's deflected it, and I think Yandel set him up, so I think it was one of those. But anyway, so the next upcoming milestone that I'm referring to is he's 2 points behind, literally on the all-time points list. He's 2 points behind Bill Barber.
Yep.
That's now in Flyers history, that would be second.
Wow, that's crazy.
In NHL history, if he passes Bill Barber, he is 125th.
Okay.
Which, listen, there's been a lot of players in the NHL over over 100-year history. So if you're in the top 125, you've done something right
for sure.
Let's put it this way. Obviously, he's already in front of one Hall of Fame player in Eric Lindros. We know this. But he's in front of, let's put it this way. I don't want to stop here because, he's in front of these guys. It could just as easily be a different story.
He's in front of a lot of Hall of Famers.
No, but I'm going to ask, okay, I'm trying to find a good name here.
There are a lot of people in the Hall of Fame.
All right, let's play a game.
Okay.
There's a guy on this list. There's two guys on this list then that I think could qualify. One is not as much of a goal scorer as the other is. So I will say one guy scores a lot more goals than, it makes up a good chunk of his points total. So you can factor that in. But both guys definitely have playoff success to their names.
Okay.
So that if you think that winning a cup changes the game for him in a Hall of Fame discussion, for Giroux, then winning cups changes the game for these two, obviously.
Okay, so is one of them Alexander Ovechkin?
No.
Oh, okay.
So Ovechkin's a Hall of Famer whether he won a cup or not.
100%.
Okay. So let me give you point totals, because Claude Giroux's overall point total, by the way, is 881.
Okay.
So one guy who I'm looking at has 797 career points.
Okay.
And by all accounts is done playing.
By all accounts?
Okay, Hockey Reference still has him labeled like an active player, but he really has not been active.
Oh, is this like a Pavel Datsyuk thing?
No, it actually isn't. Even though you're on the mark here because Ilya Kovalchuk is like that too.
Okay.
And he's not really active in the NHL, even though he has an active contract in the NHL.
Good old LTIR retired.
Right, but not this guy. This guy legit, I don't think has a contract. He does not qualify. But he has 700.
Marleau there?
Marlowe's going to have way more points than that. Marlowe's over 1,000.
Oh, you're right.
Easy.
You're right.
And Marleau already is going to make the Hall of Fame with or without a cup because he played in the most games in NHL history.
Yeah, you're right.
And backed it up with
hey, how to do it.
Well, and backed it up with, hey, listen, he was a good point producer for a lot of it. He backed it up. He's crossed all of the thresholds you need to cross to be a Hall of Famer, whether you have a cup or not. Claude Giroux is not going to score 500 goals, and Claude Giroux is not going to maybe won't have 1,000 points. It's going to be tight, and he won't.
Depends on how long he plays.
Okay, and I will make a counter argument for the 1,000-point thing in a minute too. By the way,
I think 1,000 points is actually pretty doable because
it might be doable for him.
Get over 900 this year.
Okay, it's probably doable for him, but I'm going to make a counterpoint for that in a second. But who's the player?
Not do it in a Flyers jersey. That's going to be the sad part.
Well, yes, but that's actually not the footnote I'm going to go to because it's going to be it's actually going to be a pretty, I don't want to say legitimate comparison, but it's going to be by the era, probably a legit comparison.
All right, so hit me with these names.
Okay, so the seven. I'll start with the 797 because it seems like you're really at a loss. I'm going to say another one, and you're going to get it.
Okay,
but 797 points, which ranks. Where was it at just now? 176th all time. Justin Williams. Now, is Justin Williams a Hall of Famer?
Probably.
And I'm sure a lot of it's fueled by playoff success. Guy won cups.
Fair.
Guy was Mr. Game 7.
Yep.
But he had that kind of career as a normal regular season career. But people think he's got a Hall of Fame case because of the playoff success.
Flyers legend Justin Williams.
Okay, now let's do another one. 20 points lower on the list. So he is tied with. Okay, this is perfect because this guy is not only tied for 187th with another Hall of Famer, but is also 2 points behind a different Hall of Famer who also, if I'm not mistaken, I have to double check. Let me double check. Who also never won a cup.
Okay, hit me with it.
Never won a cup. Okay, so who do you think has the 777 points? And I will tell you offhand, without having to look it up, at least half of those points, if not close to more, are goals. And he is
Same
still
team?
an active. No.
Or
Many,
does he have a cup?
yes.
Okay.
He did.
Is it Jeff Carter?
Yep.
Okay. That's what I
Jeff
was
Carter.
thinking. Okay.
No, Jeff Carter is tied in points, by the way. Now, he's obviously going to move further ahead by the end of the year, no question. But he's tied in points with Rob Blake, who's a defenseman. So I'm going to take that with a footnote. But he's 2 points behind Pavel Bure, who is a Hall of Famer and never won a cup and had only 779 points.
Okay.
So, you don't have to reach the 1,000-point mark without winning a cup to, get there. So Drew's got a shot. I'm not trying to say he doesn't.
But you didn't answer the question. Is Claude Drew a Hall of Famer?
I still think it's a tough case, and I will tell you why then, because here's the comparison I'm going to make. The 1,000-point threshold.
Give me a yes or a no.
Because I know I'm saying I don't think he's going to.
You're saying no? You don't think right now Claude Drew is a Hall of Famer?
I'm saying no, and I'm saying saying he's got an argument. I don't think he'll be dismissed right away. Get out of here with that discussion. But I don't think he makes it ultimately, and I'll go into it based off of this then. There are 92 players in NHL history who have reached 1,000 points. That usually is a marker for you're going to get there.
Oh, yeah.
500 goals is 500 home runs, and 1,000 points is, 3,000 strikeouts, right? You've done a lot over your career. It gets recognized. For example, the most recent addition to the 1,000-point club came this year. It's Ryan Getzlaf. Is Ryan Getzlaf a Hall of Famer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there you go. The guy right ahead of him, who was previously the lowest player out of the 1,000-point club, 1,004 points, is a player that we all should be familiar with. Maybe not necessarily like you or I by playing, but we all are familiar with the name. He's not a Hall of Famer. He could be. He's got a case. And I think that he actually is very representative of what Claude Drew is to this current era in Flyers hockey.
Okay.
And no, this player did not spend his entire career as a Flyer.
Okay. Hit me with it.
Got any? Okay. It's Brian Propp.
Okay.
But Brian Propp has over 1,000 points in his career. Could easily qualify as Brian Propp was getting picked up and playing on national teams with the likes of Gretzky and Lemieux, playing on Canada Cup teams with Gretzky and Lemieux.
Right.
Factored in as one of those types of players, and yet, as much as he was that kind of player during that time, and they had teams that made Cup finals, and obviously Drew's teams have not, they never won under him. And it's here's this really talented guy who's going to go on to set, I'm not going to say set Flyer records, but he's right up there. He's top 5 in Flyer everything. Goals, points.
He does have the record for power play points.
Drew does. I'm talking about Brian.
I'm
talking about Propp.
Right. I'm sorry.
Brian Propp was also Drew was 2 years ago or last year was passing Brian Propp. Now he's about to pass Bill Barber and stuff.
It's crazy.
I think Propp was also...
And there's only one name left on the most lists for Claude.
Right. Now, the difference between that name and anybody else on the list is that's the captain of the team that won.
Yep.
That's the difference. But I must say, to me, that I find that argument to be so similar to the argument for Brian Propp. Brian Propp actually does cross the threshold for 1,000 points though, and played and did not I have to click. I don't think he didn't play 1,000 games because only one Flyer has ever played 1,000.
And we both agreed that we think Claude will
Propp
cross
played
that 1,000-point threshold.
Okay, Propp did play just over 1,000 games because he did play elsewhere. He was traded to Boston in 1990, and then for the last couple of years of his career, he played 3 in Minnesota and 1 in Hartford.
Okay.
And then that was it. So he did have a couple of years, I don't know, if he doesn't have like if he's got an argument but isn't in and doesn't ever seem like he's never the next guy on the list either. You know what I mean?
No, he's not a
when
name that people talk about.
like next year when you think of who goes into the Hall of Fame when they decide to announce the next Hall of Fame class, just like a handful of the names that are getting like play for this guy should be in. Like you're getting, Alex McGillney is a guy who keeps getting brought up. Like why isn't he in yet? Rod Brindamore is even getting brought up. As why
Give
are
Rod the bod? Come on.
Oh, I'd love for him to be in the Hall of Fame. I still want him, and he's got a good team this year. I'd love for them to find a way to win a cup under his leadership. Because let me just say right now, if cool. I don't even know how many years has it been with him in Carolina as the head coach. Because he's been with Carolina forever, but how long has it been since he was the head coach? 4 years?
4-ish years? 5 years, maybe?
Because the reason I'm saying is because, like, in hindsight, if you don't go, I hate to say this now. I really hate that I'm going here. If you don't go Dave Haxtell and think about him, and I know it's a total, like, hey, it would have been totally typical at the time to sit there and go, we're bringing back the ex-Flyer.
Oh, God.
But could you imagine? People love this guy.
Man,
people love playing for this guy, but he seems like he fits perfectly.
He loves Carolina so.
He does, and he fits in there, in there really well. You know why he fits in there really well? Because it's low key.
Yep, absolutely.
I guarantee you,
Wiggly wearing flip flops, and he's fine.
Yep, I was gonna say he can walk the streets and not have an issue. But you know why he can walk the streets? Because he doesn't have to live in the exact location of the arena. He can live in the countryside somewhere and enjoy privacy.
To be fair, I've lived in that area in North Carolina. There's nobody quite as attractive as Rod Brindamore there. He's a handsome man. Tell me I'm wrong.
Sure. No, I mean, whatever. I don't know how we got here. Yeah. So all right.
This is always a Rod Brindamore appreciation show.
All right. So let's go to the coach thing again because the names that were out there, right? Oh, but okay. I guess to finish off on the what's next thing, I need to finish off on this because
one more thing about Claude Giroux actually before we get off it. Regardless of his Hall of Fame status, he's a shoo-in to get his number retired, right?
I don't know because
really.
Because they don't
captain for a decade. Because the only good player on the franchise for like several years there.
Because they don't do it for anybody who doesn't make the Hall. That's the thing. Like,
yeah,
let's put it this way: there are guys who make the Hall who they don't even recognize the right way.
Oh, that's fair.
I mean, for God's sake, look.
They treat their captains well, though.
Read between the lines now, just a little bit here, okay? And I'm not trying to say there's any influence on one thing leading to another here, but there's a name who just went into the team's Hall of Fame who also was at the top of the list of coaching candidates. Like, it's not
I'm
lost.
still not convinced it's not happening.
Okay, but listen, it's not lost on me that the guy was in town 3 weeks earlier for a Hall of Fame ceremony, schmoozing it up with Dave Scott and like everybody else who's in upper management and probably and all that stuff for a couple nights to then be inducted into the Flyers Hall of Fame.
Well, you saw the bit. You saw the bit of him on the TNT set, right? Where he like rushed off the set to take a phone call. Did you not see that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
I used it. I made it a takeaway.
Oh, it was funny.
Because I the way I even shared it because I retweeted it and I quote tweeted it and I said, look, whether there's something to it or not, this is funny as hell because they're totally because let's put it this way. I saw mixed stuff because I saw people who were I saw three different responses to that. I saw one which was he's coming to Philly. 2 was he got the phone call from Fletcher and told him to F off. And 3 was this is such a bit.
I'm gonna say 2 sentences and they're both true.
Okay.
I like Rick Tocchet a lot. I think he's very entertaining.
Yeah.
Second sentence. I don't want him anywhere near my bench.
Okay.
I don't want him anywhere near my bench. We talk about the team struggling to develop players. We talk about, no. Keep Rick Tocchet away, please. I like him a lot. He's entertaining. I want to have a beer, play around a golf with him. I just don't want him head coaching my team.
I think you're putting too much stock into how much the head coach of the NHL team handles the development. Fair. Like that's my bigger concern. Like,
I'm concerned about his deployment of young players and how that would hinder their development.
Okay, so here's the reason why I would do it. It's not You're saying keep him away from the bench. My answer is keep anybody who's an established NHL coach away from the bench. Like, do not give John Tortorella's name is out there. Claude Julien, Mike Babcock. There are people out there who are sitting here saying, keep waiting out the Islanders because if they don't turn it around, then Barry Trotz will be out there and you can hire him. I don't want any one of those coaches around the team. Like, the last thing you need is a guy like that, first of all, who comes in and the whole purpose of him coming in is, I'm here to give the team a kick in the ass.
Right.
I don't think that's what this, that's acting like what's still here, like what they've built for this year is actually going to amount to is going to amount to a winning roster. I just don't see it. So I brush that off right away. The second part of it is that you also give yourself expectations that it will turn around and will for a longer period. How do you what do you think happens if you bring in a coach like that? You know, you're saying we still think we can win right now, and and everybody's underachieving and blah blah blah. Like enough of that stuff. You've already had, and I led off with this in one of my radio spots this week. You've employed in your team's history 5 of the top 14 coaches in wins. You just fired the guy who's 8th on the list. Within the last decade, you fired the guy who's, I think, 11th on the list or something like that, or he's somewhere in there because Laviolette's on the list. And then you've had, Ken Hitchcock is on the list, and he's like 4th on the list. And you've had 2 other coaches in their time who, at the time, were just starting out on what led to or could have been high-end, near Hall. Well, in one guy's case, a Hall of Fame career, because Pat Quinn is in the Hall of Fame, but you've had guys who eventually became coaches that everybody knew as revered as top of the line NHL coaches down the stretch. Because Mike Keenan was that way too.
I'm just gonna say it, and it's something I've said before on this show, and it's something I feel pretty passionately about, and I think you know what's coming here.
Go ahead.
Talked about the coach firing with my dad and my uncle in a group text. And my uncle brought up Rick Tocchet. And I said, you know why I don't want Rick Tocchet behind the bench? Because I don't want another one of Paul Holmgren's buddies. I don't want one of the old boys club. I don't want another retread. And to me, that's what hiring Rick Tocchet represents.
Okay, but all right, so my counter. All right, my counter to at least one of those points is it's not as much of a retread as some of these other coaches who continue to get bounced around every other year. I mean, let's put it this way. If you think Rick Tocchet's a retread, then guess what? I have news for you. Everybody who's at the top of the list actively in wins is a retread.
No,
down to Vancouver brought in Bruce Boudreau, who has also coached 3 other teams, within recent memory that we can actually tap back into.
I would like to see Travis Green, honestly.
Okay, you're not that far off. You know who I actually said would be the right type to bring in? I'm not saying this guy, but the right type. David Quinn.
I don't hate David Quinn.
Get me, and you know why? And this is why, and to be honest, this is why I don't mind Tocchet. I understand where you're coming from. To be honest, to counter your point about it being part of the old boys club, if you will,
I don't know anybody who's affiliated with Paul Holmgren, honestly.
Okay, I will tell you based on what I feel anyway, I don't think Paul Holmgren's got his fingerprints on this organization near as much as you want to believe.
Good. No, good. And I'm hoping that's
in that sense, if it does become Tocchet, I don't think he had anything to do with it.
Okay. So,
truthfully.
Okay. As long as Fletcher still firmly has the reins.
Oh, I don't know if he's still got the reins. I wouldn't call it firmly.
Fair enough.
Because let's be real. We're going right back to the beginning, kind of in a sense, where we started with the fire with him getting fired, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah, when AV got the AX.
Yeah, because I don't think that was all I don't really think it was Chuck Fletcher's idea. I think that after a 7-1 loss to Tampa Bay, Chuck Fletcher got a phone call from Dave Scott, and basically it was, "Are you going to do something about this?" And what's the easiest thing to do in December?
Coach.
What's the easiest thing to do? I think that this had a lot to do with that, which really should just frighten you. If this is the guy who is calling some of your shots, you should be scared.
Well, you run into this problem in every city. You see it in Boston or in Buffalo. You see it in Edmonton. You see it in
these
Winnipeg.
Ownership groups.
You see it everywhere. where ownership meddles. And one
They
of the
do, but
responsibilities of your GM is weathering that storm and managing up to his relationship with the owners.
yeah, they do, but like I don't know. Anyway, I'm trying to get back to where I was with the other stuff. Okay, okay, so talk it to me if they made him the coach. Doesn't change anything about expectations, which is my goal. I don't want a guy with expectations. I don't want a Tortorella. I don't want a Claude Julien. I don't even want a Barry Trotz. And I love Barry Trotz as a coach. But I don't even want that, because to me that says there's expectations. The guy's either won a cup before or he has come close before, and he's won a lot of games.
You're not bringing Barry Trotz in to go through a 2, 3, 4 year rebuild. You're just not.
Right. I can't.
He's not interested in that at this point in his career.
But see, here's the problem with that what you just said, because you said the right word. You said go through the rebuild. They need to say that themselves.
Yeah.
If they don't acknowledge it, then you're gonna get a patchwork kind of guy, and they could very well bring in Rick Tocchet, and I could look at it and say I don't hate the hiring because his coaching career is less than stellar. He gets a good amount out of the players that he has on rough teams, because you're not gonna sit there and deny the guy coached Arizona for how many years, and like they won a playoff series under him at least. You know?
This was mentioned on 32 Thoughts, this topic, kind of Rick Tocchet to Philadelphia as the coach.
Yeah.
Jeff Merrick asked, well, he's the Rick Tocchet whisperer, he's the Phil Kessel whisperer. Does that mean Kessel ends up in Philly? To which Elliot Friedman responded, well, I think Kessel was going to end up in Philly anyway. Pardon? Do you know anything about this?
No.
Okay. I don't know where this came from, but it, according to Elliot Friedman, according to 32 Thoughts, the podcast.
But for what? Like, that's what I'd love to know.
Like, I have no idea. Is Arizona not quite bad enough for Phil?
That's another viable question. Why is this viable a question? Is for what? Like,
right.
Like what would you be giving up to acquire him?
For who? For what? Like, there's no purpose.
No, there is no purpose.
JVR, like, send his contract to the desert.
Ooh, no, see, at that point, I'd do it.
You're not wrong.
Well, isn't Kessel up this year?
Correct.
Okay, see, that's why I'd do it. Like, I could like, honest to goodness, that's when you make that trade. Yeah, I'll trade for a guy who's going to last for the next couple months if it gets rid of another contract, and they eat salary too. Like, if that's an even 1-for-1, hey, we'll take JVR's salary. Oh my goodness, I would be jumping to do that, because then I'm going to get the money back anyway. I don't even have to keep Kessel.
No, you can flip him.
Well, no, they don't even have to flip him. You can get him for the rest of the year and say you're riding it out here. What's the difference?
That's true.
And then go there. I mean, I don't care. Do whatever you want. That would be honestly, that would be sheer brilliance from Fletcher if he did that, because again, that it actually opens up more money if you do that.
Let's go.
If you legitimately traded for James Van Riemsdyk and somehow didn't retain salary because what you brought back was Phil Kessel, holy smokes, that would be a deal, because you just opened yourself up.
So much money just got free. So much
to
money
at least do
free.
something. I mean, my issue, what I keep coming back to as an issue here, is I don't know what you do.
Right, if you still want them to tear it all the way down, then a couple extra million doesn't really make that much of a difference, to be honest with you. Right, if you don't intend on being good this year or next year, you're not quite as incentivized to get rid of JVR's contract, because you're just not going to be good anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Like, to me, there's so much that needs to be done, and the issues were very clear when you actually. They weren't winning on Monday. We all knew that. Too much had happened, not enough time to process it. Honestly, I give them credit in their own right for making that actually an entertaining game that was
fun.
Modestly competitive, because it didn't even have reason to be. Because it was pretty well known they weren't going to win that night based on everything that happened. Wednesday was totally unacceptable, and that's where the red flags come in, because you did have time to process it now, and you should have come out with just a total, you should have come out with as much fire as the dog in the house burning down meme. and
Right.
didn't, like you came out with the energy of the dog sitting in the burning house.
Everything's fine.
So that's that's part of the big issue. And I just don't see anybody. Like I come back to what I said earlier. Carter Hart's here to stay, and your goal right now needs to be, truthfully, I don't care if it takes 3 years, 5 years, whatever it takes. If you build this thing, you have to do it in the course of that time because you still have time with him. 5 years from now, he's in the prime of his career. By all means, get it done, but do it for him.
See, here's the problem. And I love Carter Hart as much as anybody else. Everyone here, everyone who's ever listened to a minute of this show knows how much I love Carter Hart.
Mm-hmm.
Do you suffer from the problem of Carter Hart is too good and keeps you in and wins you too many games for you to truly be bad enough to be going through a rebuild?
Not necessarily,
Or
because
do you
there's
just trust your coach to not play him as much?
a little bit of both.
Okay.
And
you get what I'm saying? Because if he's going to be as spectacular as we think he's going to be.
I'm saying a little bit of both because inevitably he's going to also have games like Sunday where it just goes totally south. So he's not going to win every single night. They're not going to let
as we learned from the UFC event last night and Amanda Nunes getting tapped out, even the best in the world have an off night sometimes.
So he's not going to steal you games every single night. He's doing it a lot, but he's not going to do it every single night.
Right.
And then I do think that if you brought in not the right coach, but if you brought in a coach who understands like think about it from this perspective. And the only thing that's that can't relate in this moment is you're not sitting here having a competition among like Carter Hart versus blank, both in the same boat as young guys who are trying to win a job. He's already won it. We all know it. Like he had it won after his first rookie season, let alone the really good year where they got to the playoffs, and then even the awful year. It was still about building him back up.
Yep.
But if you were to do it like the Rangers, for example, where you've got two guys, both can start, both can possibly win, but they might not win a whole lot, and you can kind of balance them out. And like the issue is that you very clearly have an advantage with one guy in net over the other.
Right.
And so I don't know. That's it's really tough. Like you know, and you definitely know, you can't just tank. It's not that simple.
Well, right. And the other part of that is a coach is never going to coach purposely to lose games. Players are never going to play.
No, I'll tell you why that happens.
Well, right. Players are never going to play purposely to lose games. A tank has to be initiated by the front office. They have to, right? You have to put a bad coach in place, or you have to put crappy players on the roster. You have to bog things down. You have to interfere with the day-to-day roster. Like, you have to drag things down if you want to tank, because players are playing for contracts and coaches are playing for contracts.
Right. It's the scene. Well, no, it's the scene out of Moneyball where he's going down to the manager, where Billy Bean's going down to the manager and goes, "You can't play Payne today." And the guy goes, "Why not? I plan to." And he goes, "You got to play Hatterberg." And he goes, "Why?" He goes, "Because I just traded him." The general manager comes in and literally tells you, "Here's why you can't play him. He's not on our team anymore. Go on. Now play the next guy." And to be honest, that's how you're going to get a lineup where your fourth line is your Patrick Browns, Zach McEwens, Connor Bunnemans, and you get that for a while. Like, it might have to turn into that a little bit.
And I know we talk about it a lot, but man, Zach McEwen's fun to watch.
Zach McEwen, let me say this about Zach McEwen, and this is backing up what I'm trying to say. He's a restricted free agent at the end of the year. I'm signing him, and I'll tell you why I'm signing him. It has nothing to do with he's going to make him better. I'm not trying to go anywhere next year or the year after. So you know what? I've got his rights. I might as well sign a guy for cheap who's going to play at least with some entertainment value. He's not going to score goals, but he'll fight a guy maybe for me. He'll be a pest.
He'll bring you what you need when you're going through a tough rebuild. You need somebody there to protect your young players.
By the way, I need the guy to score a goal though again at some point. And I'll tell you,
man.
No, I'll tell you why. It's a funny story. That's why I'm saying.
Are you putting $1 on it every game?
No, that's not what it is.
Because he's due, man. I wouldn't blame you.
No, but I gave people good betting advice on the air on Friday because I told people take the over, and it did hit. So
in the first period.
No, not Monday.
Oh, okay.
Friday against Vegas. I said take the over, but wait, the Flyers have to contribute to that over, so I don't know. And then they still scored 4 goals, so it worked out. Because believe me, I gave full disclosure. I'm like, do not take my advice. Don't take my advice on this. No, it is actually station related because I went on at one point, or not. I went on. I was listening at one point in time, and and they were talking about the Flyers, and it was the one night they had lost a game and it was awful, and McEwen was the only. Remember, McEwen was the only guy getting good shots. He was the
Yep.
only guy getting even anything worth noting.
Only guy generating any sort of offense. He looked like Joel Farabee for most
Well,
of last season.
Well, I'm listening to the show, and all of a sudden I hear the host of the show turn around and say something about, and by the way, who's Lightning McQueen out there? And now I need him to score a goal so I can post a Lightning McQueen GIF just to.
Man, that's really funny.
Yeah, I need to do it. Like, I so need this to happen so I can post that and just say, look who scored Lightning McQueen.
Yeah, but Zach McEwen's been a lot of fun.
It would be funnier if the guy's uniform number was 95. That would be hilarious.
That would be good. If he changes it next season, we know why.
No, I don't even think he knows that exists. It was literally a play on. I don't even know who this guy is, and I sat there for a second. I'm going Lightning McQueen, and then I thought about it. I went, McEwen.
It's pretty close, yeah.
I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it now. Okay, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, like, to me, I totally 1,000% understand your premise with Tocchet. Totally 1,000% get it, because I got asked the same question. Do you really want to go back down this road? Like, it's the former Flyer, it's this. Like, yeah, I know. My thing is that there's multiple. We already stated it. There's multiple coaches available who fit the bill of high-end, top-of-the-line coaches, and you don't have to. Let's be real. It's been talked about a lot. They owe Alain Vigneault $13.5 million over the next 3 years because they fired him halfway through the third season of his contract.
Yeah,
and there was
question. I do want to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alain Vigneault got done a little dirty because he never got a regular season. The last regular season he was coaching, they were the hottest team in hockey going into the pause.
Yeah, but the thing for me is that he never really showed a good ability to adjust to anything.
I agree, and I don't think that's entirely wrong. But I would have, I don't know. I think I would have given Alain Vigneault the end of the season no matter what. Pretty close to no matter what, because he showed you in 2019-20 that he could turn it around and he could get a team going by, the spring, by the time we start pushing for the playoffs.
The problem with that is that you're going to face the very tough line to cross, whether or not to, like, it becomes one of those things where you go, because how many people did we hear say after the Tampa game, well, you have to do something at this point? Well, that was really the only something they could do. Short of sitting here saying, Chuck Fletcher, you're not in charge of the team anymore, that was the only other thing they could do.
Yeah, I suppose.
No one's bailing. No, because no one's going to bail them out.
You're right.
You don't think?
I think he lost the room.
Oh, I think so for sure.
And I agree that when he loses the room, he's got to go. Like I get that.
I don't listen. Here's what I'll say to this. I don't know that it's going to be one guy's fault over the other per se. And just hear me where I'm going with this. Because there's a lot of speculation that the way that the offseason just went had a lot to do with the coaching staff. Bring us these types of players, and it wasn't down to a science where they went, like, Alain Vigneault wasn't sitting there going, bring me Cam Atkinson, bring me Ryan Ellis. That's exactly what we need. No. It wasn't that per se, but it was. It started to evolve to that. I'll say that much, because I can guarantee you that after a certain amount of time of sitting there and there's nothing going on, like, it was, go out and get me Keith Yandel. Go out and get me Derek Brassard. I had those guys before. I can make it work. Go get me those guys. Like, I believe that happened. I don't believe it happened with Atkinson or Ristolainen or with Ellis.
Right.
But at the same time, I do think there was an emphasis on go get me veterans who don't allow this stuff to happen, who don't allow the room to get so bad.
Right.
And I almost think that that's trying to take an easy way out. It was literally trying to take an easy way out to a sense of not necessarily results, but to take an easy way out to, if we hit adversity, if we lose a couple in a row or 3 or 4, it'll stop, because these guys will be level-headed and they won't let it get to them, and the frustration won't get to them. And
it's funny because I think he did his job a little too well. I think the room was pretty united. They were just kind of united against him. Like, when you put Kevin Hayes and Keith Yandel in a room, they're going to be friends. They're going to chit-chat.
when
They seem like the kind of players that can unite a locker room against a coach.
I can't. Hayes played for him for almost his entire career. I can get it if Yandel doesn't love it, but
I don't know, man.
Hayes pretty much like
things turned at the end in New York, didn't they? Didn't they get nasty in the room there?
I think that was just collectively though, and Hayes just happens to be a byproduct of it. I don't remember it being nasty specifically with him.
But we've heard about Alain Vigneault really grinding on players after a little while, and Kevin Hayes has had a lot of while.
What he doesn't do well is kind of sugarcoat things. I mean,
feel like he doesn't manage his room the best. He's one of those like max effectiveness is the first 3 years kind of guy. Like not quite John Tortorella, 18 months of fire and fury, but kind of the slightly slower burn version of that, where he's really at his peak effectiveness when the message is fresh.
Right, I get that. It's tough to say. It's really tough to say because you got to factor all that stuff in. You got to try to see what you can get. And
we knew that when we hired him, right? We talked about the fact, I believe we talked about it on the show, that he reaches the conference finals or the cup final in his first year and then never gets back there. Right, we talk about the freshman,
and they didn't get that. They didn't even get that close.
Okay, but
again, it wasn't.
Then you play the what if game, right? That's not Alain Vigneault's fault. He was doing the Alain Vigneault thing. They were the hottest team in hockey, like we talked about.
So it's funny you bring it up that way because you're sitting here saying you play the what if game over his first season. I'm getting really tired of playing the what if game over everybody.
I agree.
I don't need to go back to the trades that they made in 2013 or 2014 or the signings that they made and say, what if this worked out or what if they got this guy? Like, I don't
even want to go back as far as like the Braden Shen trade. That's too far. No.
Right. Like, and you know where this really happens? It happens with the draft. It's the what if they take this because I'm not going to play. Like, I'm already tired of playing this game with the Nolan Patrick pick.
Bro, I'm tired of hearing about Alex DeBrincat too.
Yeah, but okay, so that one, okay, it makes
every team in the league passed on him.
True.
It's not just the Flyers. It's not like they picked 5th and he went 7th. Like every single team in the league passed on him at least once.
Well, because this is where I go with the development thing again. You got to ask yourself. Like I was sitting there Monday night and it was brought up again because Cale Makar scored a goal that was highlight reel variety. And
sure,
it's
hindsight 2020. You take Cale Makar there, but it doesn't matter now.
But do you even know if he's that player if he's being developed by this organization?
That's true.
Colorado develops players and gets them there. Like, let's put it this way. I even started to see people who, no joke, I started to see people who have gone in the direction of Ivan Provorov was picked before Mikko Rantanen. They could have had Mikko Rantanen.
Stop. Mikko Rantanen. People didn't know what Mikko Rantanen was going to be.
Mikko Rantanen also got gifted with 2 outstanding players next to him to boost his value pretty quickly.
McKinnon is a top 5 player in the world. Some would argue a top 3, depending on the day.
Now, don't get me wrong. Playing with those guys gets you something. Like it's going to build your skill level because absolutely it does. And
you get to watch those guys in practice all day, every day.
But there's also a difference between remember when Michael Raffl was a top line player and next to guys like Drew. Who else did he play with besides Drew? Who else was that? Was it with Voracek too? I guess it was with Voracek.
It would have been Drew Voracek or it wasn't Simmons.
Nah, it wouldn't have been Simmons. No. If nothing else, Simmons was the other guy.
I think it was most of the time it was Voracek.
All right, okay. But my point being, we sit there and say, oh, it elevated his game a lot at that time because they were really good, right? Obviously.
Yeah, it elevated him from a 30-point player to a 50-point player.
My point, though, is that he wasn't going to be the permanent solution there, and they never made him that. If you draft a player and say, listen, we're going to put you next to 2 of the best players on the team, best players in the world at the time, all that type of stuff, you're going to eventually, if you do it with some consistency like Colorado has, or even, let's put it this way, David Pastrnak was a late first round. I saw people talking about that because Pastrnak went 8 picks after Sanheim. They already needed a defenseman anyway. So, but again, you put Pastrnak next to Patrice Bergeron, who, again, there's another guy who's eventually a Hall of Famer, and Brad Marchand, and you go, and it's not just about where they are as players at that time per se. It's the consistency of doing it. That's your how many years has that been the top line for those 2 teams?
A long time.
Right. So, of course,
since
the player
who came up, basically.
Right, but of course, eventually, they're going to get to a skill level that matches their line mates because it's done consistently. They've already got the talent. They've already got the talent to make it there, but then you keep them there. And even when they go through little droughts and don't score and have issues and things like that, you make up for it eventually. And guess what? They become so good at their positions and in their roles that they start educating the others and saying like, hey, like second line guys, third line guys, this is how you get better. This is how you eventually, literally, this is how you eventually take my job. Like they set the bar so high for guys who want to be in that spot that it's come take my job then.
Yep.
And the only way to do that is to reach a level that you haven't been at before. And the thing is, the Flyers don't have a guy who's passing Claude Giroux to do that.
So, Boston Bruins second line for the playoffs. Charlie Coyle centering Taylor Hall and Claude Giroux.
I think at that point, Claude Giroux would play center. I think they'd love it if they could move Charlie Coyle back to third line center.
I don't know. I think Claude's been so good on the wing.
Okay,
I think he takes the draw, but I think Charlie Coyle plays.
Let's do this one then. Let's do this one instead. Claude Giroux on a line with Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno.
Oof, that's nasty. That's a whole.
That
lot
sounds
of nasty.
interesting.
That is a whole lot of nasty.
I'll tell you what.
And also Taylor Hall.
I really hope it's Colorado though, because I really don't want to have to get behind the Boston Bruins for a playoff run.
Man, you're not wrong.
Give me Colorado. Give me Colorado. Give me. I'm trying to think of who else. What other team out there that we were thinking was a good fit?
Hey, you ready? You ready?
What?
Left wing Claude Giroux. Center right wing Matthews Marner. Stop.
No, I'm saying it's good. It's just I don't know if they
or Tavares Nylander. Is that better?
Oh man.
They could do whatever they wanted with it. And
I'm trying to think of
the crazy part is he's probably on their second power play unit. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I'm trying to think if there's anywhere else that he could go that would actually make a lot of sense like that, where you think about it putting a team over the top.
Calgary.
I thought that for a second. I could get behind that.
Gaudreau, Monahan, Giroux.
Nah, because they'll keep Lindholm there, so he'll go. Giroux will play on the line with Kachuk and Mangiapane.
Oh my god!
Ooh.
Oh my god! Mangiapane scores 40 this year. Claude Giroux and Kachuk on the wings. Oh god! Who wants to play against that team?
I mean, even then, you know who you're taking off of that line. You're taking Backlund off that line. Maybe he's a third liner on that team.
Honestly, it probably is if you don't want to interrupt the vibe.
I mean, I'd have to see. He doesn't play. By the way, he won't play with Monahan because Monahan kind of has been all over that lineup.
Just trade him to Tampa, and everybody's hitting one-timers from everywhere.
Oh God, where would he even slot in on Tampa?
He would be back
third.
He would be Steven Stamkos when Steven Stamkos is hurt during the whole playoffs.
Oh, that's not going to happen. I think Stamkos is good to go.
I hope so. I certainly hope so.
Well, anyway, all right, never mind.
Prove it to me, Steven.
All right. Well, anyway, back to try to wrap this whole thing up and also get off of everything. There's so much to try to talk about. All right. How about we finish with two things really quick? First of all, being the fact that yes, by the end of this week, as much as we've been talking about this, they did win 2 games.
They did win 2 games.
And so what's next is, all right, you got your first back-to-back wins in 6 weeks, something like that. It's close to. And I don't know. What do you do from there? You've got the Devils on the schedule. You've got Montreal. You got Ottawa. The Devils are now 1 point ahead of you again in the standings in the same amount of games played. And then Montreal is ranked 31st and Ottawa is ranked 30th. And you just took care of business more or less convincingly. I mean, was it the most sound?
Sloppy.
Right. Was it the most sound process? No. As a matter of fact, during most of the first period, as we were watching this 1-1 game, I turned around in my mind and I went, yeah, this looks like a game between two teams in the bottom quarter of the standings. It's exactly the type of game that is played between two bottom 8 teams.
Sloppy.
Right. Now, that being said, there is something to be said for winning games. They'll take as my key phrase when I posted takeaways was wins are wins at this point. And after the brutal week that and after the brutal start to the week that they had, they will take it.
Yep.
So
that's why I think we're still kind of in wait and see mode here. If they win 6 out of the next
definitely
8, maybe things turn around. If they lose 4 out of the next 6.
Well, because here's also where I'm at with this. Let's make no mistake about it. You can beat New Jersey. You just actually have to have the effort. You can beat New Jersey though, and then you definitely can if you can beat Arizona the way you just did, and hell, if you can beat Vegas the way you did in the middle of a losing streak like this, you can beat you can beat Montreal and you can beat Ottawa. And what happens if you do all three? And all of a sudden you just followed up the 10-game losing streak
with a
five-game winning streak.
Yep.
And you weren't necessarily that far out of the race. Like this does a lot. That does a lot in a bunch of ways, and I'll explain. First, it starts to put some sense of confidence into the coaching change did a lot, and Mike Yeo is all of a sudden the reason why. Like I think that would be going too far.
I don't think
playing
it's
bottom.
That. Right.
No, you're playing bottom feeders. I don't think it's that, but you know that thought's going to come up.
Well, you say they're playing bottom feeders, and you're not wrong. They are. But if you look at the last 10, it's a lot of really tough teams in there, right?
It is.
You lost to Tampa 3 times.
Well, all right, and here's my point, kind of to piggyback off of it. You're going to play those 3 games. Maybe you win all 3. Now it's a 5-game winning streak.
Now you roll into a home game against Washington.
But winning 5 games in a row builds confidence.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, maybe you come out. I mean, let's put it this way: Vegas qualifies as one of those really good teams that was turning a corner a little bit. They're getting healthier. For goodness sake, did I not read something about how Jack Eichel might be available in like early into the new year? That quickly after having this surgery, that like
I'm not surprised because he wants to play in the Olympics real bad.
Like something like that, or even by mid-January or late January, that like the thought is he's already skated a couple times. He can join the team in like 3 weeks, and then the only thing he's not cleared for immediately is contact.
They still have to figure out who they're trading.
Well, that's true, but you get my point with that. Like my point being, even Vegas was turning a corner. You found a way to win that game. What happens if you go into a game against Washington and Pittsburgh after 5 straight wins? What do you do? And what happens if you somehow find a way in both of those, and all of a sudden your 10-game losing streak was followed with, I mean, literally.
And then you get to play Seattle, who's not great. San Jose is who's not great.
San Jose's okay. They're mid-pack. LA is a little bit closer to the bottom, and you got them coming up. And then Anaheim's been better also, but they've kind of.
But we're looking a month out at that point. We will. By the way, this is a good time to mention that we will be back next week.
We will be back next week.
We are back weekly here.
The only curious ones we'll have at this point probably are, I mean, I don't know if we're going to do a show immediately after. Probably only if there's like really serious breaking news. But the day after Christmas probably is going to be like take a break because there's not a whole lot to go over.
Definitely, yeah. But
yeah,
we'll be back at least for the next couple of weeks.
And we will come. That's basically next week and then a week off again.
Next week. It's okay. This week, next week, it's fine.
No, but I would go out on a limb and say we'll definitely also, because it's the day after New Year's Day, so it's not that complicated. The only thing
we'll definitely do a show that day.
The only thing that's going to be complicated for me in that regard is going to be the fact that it is a 10:30 start the night before, so we might be recording a little later.
We might do the afternoon slot, and that's fine. We'll figure that out.
Yeah, because I don't know if I'm gonna. 10:30 is not friendly for me. I am really thankful though that the 10:30 on a Thursday night comes going into New Year's Eve, so that this way there's no reason to be up for anything.
Right. But yeah, I think we kind of set it a little bit of a tune.
Oh, all right. So one more thing before we get out of here, because I just want to I don't care that we didn't get to some of the tabs over here, but we got to get to this one.
Okay,
we got to get to this one because it's too good. No, not only that, but okay. So can I do the summary of the week as I did it on the air on Friday going into. Because for what it's worth, when I went on the air on Friday, I basically said everything that goes into. I never say anything of this kind of confidence on the air, like, "Oh yeah, they're going to win tonight or they're going to lose tonight." I went on and basically flat out said that I'll be shocked if they win tonight. Get ready for number 11, and then you've got Arizona. Maybe you can break it against Arizona, but I'm not holding my breath right now because they don't do anything well.
They've been awful, right?
Right, they don't do anything soundly or well at all, and. Funny enough, what did they do well on Friday night? The power play got going.
The power play was solid
because the power play that night went 2 for 3, and the one that they didn't score on the 3 was a 5-second power play because he took another penalty right after.
Did we mention that Michel Therrien got fired? Okay.
Yeah, we did, and
just I know we did. I just wanted to make sure that we brought that back around
again,
here.
Like the magic beans that you grow out in the backyard, that just suddenly produce like all of a sudden produce power play. All right, so the week that was, you go out and you get totally embarrassed on Sunday night against Tampa Bay. We all feel like something's coming at this point, and then we wake up on Monday morning, coach is fired. Okay,
Boom.
Alain Vigneault is out. Alain Vigneault and Michel Therrien, yes. Monday afternoon, there's a viral video that's going around the internet all over the place. For our listeners, I will say it the same way I said it to be radio friendly on the air. Providing you with a literal dump and chase.
Jesus Christ.
Well, listen.
We found the episode. We found the title of the episode.
Oh, literal dump and chase?
Yup.
Do you know what going into the week? You know what it was going to be called in my mind?
Okay.
It was going to be an early Festivus because it was going to be our airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with this team, and you're going to hear about them.
I think literal dump and chase is the way we gotta go.
Yeah, literal dump and chase is the way we'll go. All right, so, but all over the place, just right there, smack in the middle of center ice, right on the logo, a big message to Dave Scott and company. This is what your team is.
In case you haven't seen it, a video surfaced of
there were multiple actually.
Police dog, correct?
Yes, there were multiple. There was
who's on the ice and decided he needed to relieve himself, shall we say?
Oh, he took care of that, all right.
And you know what? Right on the center logo, center ice, and man, the metaphor was just chef's kiss.
Oh yeah, it was so symbolic. It was perfect.
It couldn't be any funnier.
That by the way precedes the 7-5 loss to Colorado later that night, which
again, competitive game, fun game.
Yeah. Sure. Anyway, okay, and then mercifully Tuesday was just a complete day off. Nothing happened. Nothing of note.
We all took a big deep breath.
Wednesday, you get that embarrassing 3-0 effort in New Jersey, which totally shouldn't have been the case. Then Thursday comes, and that's where the banner comes from. Because Thursday, everybody decided after watching the game on Wednesday, hey, by the way, let's start a trend. And the picture of the Flyer fan wearing the bag over his head started to go around.
It started to populate a lot of Twitter profile pictures.
I got to say, not many of my mentions have it, though. There are some, but it's not nearly as populated as everybody else's.
Wait until they lose three in a row this week. They'll pop up. Don't you worry.
Three in a row to New Jersey, Montreal, and Ottawa?
Because here's the thing. We're at a tipping point. I think if the Flyers win 2 out of 3 here or get 5 points or we start to see
make it a 5-game winning streak.
Right, or something like that, I think you see the team or the public sentiment kind of roll back around and go, all right, well, maybe we're a little bit back in this. If they lose 2 out of 3 or somehow manage to lose all 3, things are going to get ugly. This is a tipping point week for sure.
Well, what I keep wondering is there a point in the middle of this that if it gets any progressively worse, that it's not just Mike Yeo that we're talking about, and he can't be the guy, then they're going to have to hire somebody. Is it also Chuck Fletcher?
Well, that's the thing Comcast needs to decide is
Vancouver just blew it up.
Right. Do you want Chuck Fletcher in charge of your next coaching process? Because that's the other thing. He's already got you locked up for 2.5, 3 more years paying Alain Vigneault. What happens if you let him hire somebody and then in a year you decide to fire him? Are you also firing that coach? Are you paying 3 coaches? Comcast has got to make a decision on this.
Okay, and the thing that also makes no sense, or not no sense, but the thing that people may be overblowing here is they're not afraid to spend money.
Oh, no, certainly not.
No, enough of that.
You don't want to pay $3-4 million coaches.
No, I agree with that, but I'm saying they're not afraid to spend money in the sense that, listen, your franchise was just valued at $1.2 billion, and you can make back the money that you owe Alain Vigneault on a couple of playoff games.
You ready?
Go ahead.
Babcock.
No, I was suggested to. Don't. No, I'm not. All right, listen.
No, I do not want Mike Babcock in charge of this team.
First of all, as much as I understand certain names that are mentioned, I'm also right. Like, do I get it? Sure, I do, and I don't think he's as bad as people think he is in terms of personality wise.
From a media perspective, you have to be begging for it. Come on.
You'll get quotables Please, the guy just turned around 2 days ago and said that a guy pulling off that move is it's cool, but
Trevor
it's not
Zegras
good for
and
the
Sonny
game.
Milano team up for the
For
sickest
the goal of the year
of
at
the
this
year.
point.
The sickest goal of the year. Maybe the sickest goal since Andrei Svechnikov picked it up and did the Michigan.
I don't, okay. Do you know why that bothers me? What was said? Not the goal. The goal was cool. The goal was awesome.
Because
you know why
John
that bothers me?
Tortorella looks like an old man yelling at a cloud. Just the Simpsons meme.
No, because I don't need Robin Lehner just sending random tweets in the middle of the night about how the Flyers still have a dinosaur.
That's fair.
Because that's exactly the type of description that you're getting. Like, the basis of that take was that 20 years ago the guy would have gotten his head taken off. That was 20 years ago.
Right.
Evolve or die.
Right. Yep.
And everybody's doing it, and you need that stuff. And this is what the kids out there are doing. It's what it's what the cool kids are doing. Anyway, yeah, but this first of all, this thing has been really funny because pretty much everywhere you go, there's just people with the bag picture.
It's the bag. Yep.
But also the fact that now people are turning, like, honest to goodness, I think I did see it somewhere that I don't remember if it happened before or after they beat Vegas, but someone turned around and said, if they do turn it around and it becomes a St. Louis
They have to give
thing,
away bags at the first playoff game.
No, it's not that. Someone turned around and goes, is this their version of Gloria? Is this what that becomes if they do turn it around? Like some total gimmicky thing that just happened, this trend that happened, and all of a sudden it's the thing that everybody rallies because they are 2-0 in the bag era.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey, what?
Yeah, guys. Get the bag. You know it's going to happen. They're going to do a cheesy video. Kevin Hayes is going to be in it. We all know it's coming.
Oh, jeez.
All right. I think it's time.
I want to see if anybody really shows up to the game on Tuesday with them.
Oh, they absolutely will.
I just need to see if that happens.
They will get taken at security, 100%.
No, you can easily sneak one in.
Oh, they'll be snuck in, but I'm saying you will also see tweets of people who got them confiscated, 100%.
Fine, whatever. Someone, you know what's going to happen also though? Someone's going to be able to get a picture from where I'm sitting. A picture will happen, and if it does, it's still enough. Because I even said this on the air. Stuff like this doesn't happen and go unnoticed. People at the top see this eventually.
This is Jersey on the ice. This is rent out the plane banner. This is up there with that kind of stuff. This is bad.
Yeah,
it's
bad.
This is Joe Must Go. This is like this is bad.
There's your week that was. It could have been much worse by the end of it, but to start out with, Sunday through Thursday was not a fun time, and
no, it was not. But
it's why I've started, like, truthfully, it's why I started to stay off Twitter when I don't have to be.
Fair enough.
When they trust me, there's no better words to hear than they played on Monday night, the coaching change happened, Tuesday was today off. You bet it is. You're damn right it's a day off for me from this stuff. I'm not paying any attention to it.
Oh, that's funny. But all right. I think that's just about going to do it. We had a lot to cover, and I think we did a pretty decent job covering the last month has been crazy.
Yeah.
And, until then, we will be back next week. I'm here to tell you that. It's going to happen. If something happens and Kevin's busy, I'll do it myself. You will upload next week.
Nah, I'll be good for whenever.
Okay.
I will be here next week for sure.
And when that episode comes out, you'll be able to find it everywhere you found this one: YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. I'm doing this in a weird order. I don't know what I'm doing. SportsTalkPhilly.com. You can find it there too. Make sure to follow Kevin over on Twitter at Kevin_Durso. Follow the show at YWT Podcast. Follow Sports Talk Philly at Sports Talk PHL and at Flyerdelphia. Is that it? I think that's just about everything. That's all the important stuff.
Is that everything? I thought, didn't you have something you wanted to do after all the?
Yeah, I'm gonna send us to a wrap here, and then
okay.
But yeah, so that's just about gonna do it for this week, and I have a little bit of a sign off here, but in the meantime, we'll see you next week, and thank you for coming out.
Okay, I'll do this first. There you go.
Yeah. Basically, I just kind of wanted to address the reason why we didn't do a couple shows.
Sure thing.
My grandfather passed on Black Friday, and we were kind of dealing with that in the weeks leading up to it, and then in the weeks since, ended up going home for his funeral and missed the last couple weeks. And I lost my grandfather. I lost a big important part of my life, but also this show lost a listener. He listened every week. I would frequently get texts about the opinions I had on the show, or things that we talked about, or this is funny,
or maybe
funny.
something stupid I said in the process too.
No, he has. I wanted to tell you, my grandfather loved you.
Awesome.
Your opinions were great. He thought you were. He's an extremely sharp young man. Was a phrase I heard quite a lot, and he really appreciated when you were on the ball, and you were very frequently on the ball. So
I will take that. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I did just want to mention that that's kind of why we weren't here the last couple of weeks, and the show lost a listener, man.
The very first week we didn't have a show was just kind of, I think it was just you had something come up, and I, to be honest, wasn't heartbroken about missing a show at that time. It was because it wasn't like anything was bad at the time. Because it was
we just needed a week off.
Yeah, well, and you know what it was too, because I wasn't disappointed because that was a weekend back to back, kind of like this one was, and the Dallas game wasn't very good, and it was right after that, so it was still mid-November at that point. But we just kind of, you know what else too? I'll tell you why I wasn't heartbroken. I remember now. I got the COVID booster earlier that weekend.
Right, you were sick that weekend, so it worked.
I wasn't necessarily sick. I actually wasn't too sick to do the show.
You were taking it easy.
But it was nice to take it easy on Sunday morning and go, hey, I don't have to get up. That's great. And then down the line, a couple more, then everything else with around Thanksgiving, all that type of stuff. And it was rough. And obviously my thoughts were with you that whole time, and your whole family too, because it was sad to hear. You didn't text me right away, but like I saw it earlier in the day on Facebook, and it was because it was everything all tied into one, because it was post Thanksgiving. I was in the middle of an incredibly busy week in that regard. I didn't really do anything. I was on my way down to the game, which is, as you know, the Black Friday game. Very weird start times. So it's a little out of the ordinary. I think I saw it right after I got to the arena.
Yeah, actually. I think I sent it to you pretty close to game time, honestly.
You text me close to, but I usually I probably went down to the arena that day pushing 1 o'clock.
Right.
And in that case, probably didn't really open Facebook until then.
Right.
I would say. So that's when I think I probably first saw it. And I kind of just knew already at that moment. I'm like, yeah, we're not having a show this weekend for sure.
Yeah, no.
And then I knowing, because we've also disclosed this on the show, that you're not in the area anymore. You were for a long time. You moved out and are in the Illinois, Chicago area, that kind of thing. So I'm like, that means there's also a trip home involved, and
24 hours of driving in a 4-day stretch.
And that's going to mean that a lot of stuff, like they're going to, first of all, if anything, it means that for services, there's time that needs to be bought for people to get back. So you're kind of holding that off a little bit so people can get into town, which means it's not going to happen until probably, I would have guessed, like mid to late week.
Friday.
Yeah, mid to late week. And I'm like, so that means that you're going to be home for the weekend. We're going to need a little bit of time, which was
weekends off for sure.
Which was fine, because actually, ironically enough, as timing would go, I wasn't going to be able to do a show on the 5th.
Okay.
At least, so ironically enough, like when you hit me with that, I'm like, listen, I was going to have to tell you this weekend, we can't do a show next weekend.
Right.
Or to go out and grab somebody to fill in for 1 week. So it worked out, but yeah, definitely was thinking about you and your whole family and stuff like that, and just dealing with it. It's, I haven't had to deal with something like that a lot lately. For me, it happened at a much younger age, a lot.
Yeah.
The only grandparent that I had left passed the September of the playoff run, was literally in the middle of the playoff series, and the closeness wasn't as strong in that direction as it was with some of the others I had. The closest grandparents I had, the closest grandparents I had were gone long ago at this point. I mean, at this point, 20 years ago. So, but there's, you carry it with you no matter how long it is. So
absolutely,
it is always, it's still tough. So,
and he was my number one fan in everything we did, and we're gonna keep doing the show for him. At least
course.
I am.
Of course.
And,
Well, and listen, here's the thing. That's the point too. Is you don't back down from, hey, it's not looking so good right now, and not do this because there's not an element of fun to it, and there's not an element of, listen, it's still worth it to be out there and to give people what they want. And there you go. That I think that's a good way of putting a bow on this one.
Absolutely.
Let's put the bow on it and get out of here.
And then we'll hit the music to get out of here because that's the way people would have wanted to do it. So,
let's give that music.
We'll see you next week, guys.
Sign off.